Welcome to my Sacred Revenge channel, where betrayal isn't just exposed, it's answered.
No fancy job titles, no prestigious awards, no exotic vacations, just early mornings. Meticulously curated grocery lists, thoughtfully packed lunches, and decades of doing everything for everyone else. Before I begin telling you my story, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. And if you'd like to share your own story, feel free to write to us. For the past several years, I've been living with my son, Elias, his wife, Brenda, and my granddaughter, Luna. We share a lovely house in the suburbs, a house, by the way, that I significantly helped them purchase. Not that they ever seem to recall that detail anymore. I handle most of the chores around here. I meticulously clean the kitchen after dinner, often long after they've all retreated to their screens or bedrooms. I pick up Luna from school when Brenda is working late, which is most days. I fold mountains of laundry and faithfully water the plants, even the ones nobody else seems to notice. I refill the fridge constantly, even though no one ever bothers to write me a list. I just inherently know what we're low on. They don't explicitly ask me to do these things, as if it's simply expected, and they certainly don't thank me. They just expect it. It's not as if they're overtly mean. Not exactly. They're polite most of the time, but I can feel it. That subtle shift. The way their eyes seem to glide past me when I speak, as if my words are mere background noise. The way they only seem to remember I exist when anything needs doing. Luna, my granddaughter, used to be so sweet when she was little. She'd clamber onto my lap, her tiny arms wrapping around my neck, and beg me to read her stories, her breath warm against my cheek. But now she's 11, teetering on the edge of adolescence. And I've seemingly morphed into that old lady who accidentally shrinks her favorite sweaters and constantly nags her about excessive screen time. Just last week, Brenda rolled, her eyes a gesture not meant for me, but impossible to miss, when I gently reminded Luna to say thank you for dinner. She's just tired. Brenda sighed as if explaining a complex scientific theory. Let her be. So I did. I always do. Elias, my son, hardly speaks to me anymore. He used to be incredibly close when he was young. He would clutch my hand tightly. As we walked to school, his small fingers nestled securely in mine. He'd cry into my shoulder when other kids teased him, his small body shaking with hurt. I was his entire world once. Now I'm just mom in the background, a convenient person to call on when the babysitter cancels or a chore goes undone. Sometimes I sit in the quiet of the garden after everyone else has gone to bed, the house finally still. I stare up at the vast, indifferent stars and wonder, with a pang of deep sadness, what exactly I'm still doing here. I poured my whole life, every ounce of my being, into this family. And now it feels like I'm just lingering, like a piece of old familiar furniture. Useful, perhaps, in some forgotten corner, but utterly unnoticed. I don't want to sound bitter. That's truly not who I am, not at my core. I love my family. I always have, with a steadfast, enduring love. But lately, that love feels profoundly one-sided. I give, they take. That is the exhausting rhythm of this house, a constant, draining ebb and flow. Tomorrow is my wedding anniversary, 45 years. Even though my beloved husband, Frederick, passed away 5 years ago, Elias had actually suggested we still celebrate. It's your day, Mom, he had told me, with a rare fleeting tenderness. I smiled and nodded, a practiced gesture, but deep down a quiet, cynical voice whispered, will it truly be about me? I didn't grow up dreaming of a grand, extravagant life. I simply yearned for a small, happy one. A family to love with all my heart, a home to care for, to nurture. I truly believed that would be enough. When I married Frederick, we were young, full of hope, and utterly in love. He had a steady job at a textile factory, providing for us, and I stayed home, meticulously caring for everything else, creating a sanctuary. Back then, he used to bring me small bouquets of flowers from the corner shop. Nothing fancy, just cheerful daisies or vibrant sunflowers. I cherished those small, thoughtful gestures. They spoke volumes, but after a few years, the flowers stopped arriving. So did the kind words, the tender glances. Frederick grew quieter, colder, his warmth receding. Work wore him down, I suppose, or perhaps he just stopped noticing me amidst the daily grind. Still, I stayed. I told myself that's what a good wife does, what commitment truly means. And besides, we had Elias by then, our beautiful son. I poured every ounce of myself into him, every bit of my energy, every reservoir of my love. When Elias left for university, I wept for 3 days straight. Not because I was worried, but because I was immensely proud, yet I instinctively knew things would change irrevocably. And they did. He met Brenda during his final year at university. She was intelligent, polished, radiating an almost intimidating confidence, the kind of woman who always looked perfectly at home in expensive, exclusive restaurants. I'll admit it, I felt acutely out of place beside her, a wilting wildflower, next to a meticulously cultivated orchid. They married within a year, a whirlwind courtship. They didn't have much money then, just a cramped, noisy apartment with perpetually clanking pipes and worn secondhand furniture. I remember how bitterly cold that first winter was. Elias tried to act as if it were perfectly fine, but I knew better, my mother's intuition screaming. I quietly sent them a top-of-the-line heater and discreetly covered their electricity bill that month, unwilling to see them suffer. Then came Luna, their daughter, my precious granddaughter. Brenda had a difficult pregnancy. She was sick most, mornings perpetually exhausted, her energy drained. I moved in for a while to help, without a second thought. I cooked nourishing meals for her, gently rubbed her swollen feet, and stayed up tirelessly with the baby when she cried inconsolably at night, singing lullabies until my voice was hoarse. They never asked me to stay permanently. I just did, because I genuinely believed they needed me, that my presence was essential. Years trickled by, and I remained. Even after Frederick passed away, leaving an aching void in my life, I didn't return to living alone in our empty house. Elias had said, "It just makes sense for you to live with us now, Mom." So I did. I sold our old house, the one filled with 40 years of memories, and poured most of the proceeds into their new home, this very house. They initially protested, feigning reluctance at least. That's what they said. But I insisted, my voice firm with conviction. "It's for the family," I told them, "a foundation for our future." I wonder now if they even remember that sacrifice. Now it's undeniably Third House, registered solely in their names, and I simply reside in the small guest room, the one with the perpetually squeaky door and the window that never quite shuts completely. They don't explicitly treat me badly, not with cruelty, but they certainly don't treat me as if I truly matter. I thought perhaps, just perhaps, this anniversary party, a celebration of my 45 years of marriage, would be different. Rare moment where I would be more than just someone relegated to the background, an invisible presence. I had even unearthed an old, treasured photograph of Frederick and me holding Elias as a baby, all three of us beaming with pure, unadulterated happiness. I left it casually on the kitchen counter that morning, thinking it might be a lovely touch, a sentimental display. But when I returned an hour later, it was gone, discarded, tucked away, out of sight. I don't know. All I know is nobody uttered a single word about its disappearance. The morning of the party, I woke unusually early, long before the sun had fully risen. Sky was still painted with soft hues of pink at the edges, and the house lay wrapped in a rare, profound quiet. I slipped on my worn robe and padded downstairs to start the coffee. I knew no one explicitly expected me to, at least not out loud, but it was a ritual I always performed, a quiet service. Elias had promised the party would be simple, intimate, and warm. Just a few close friends, some neighbors, and a little food, he'd said. But I know my son. He wanted it to look good for the inevitable pictures, for social media, for his job. He works in corporate finance now. Image is absolutely everything in his world. I spent most of the day laboring in the kitchen with Brenda. She wore her hair pulled back tightly, and her annoyance, like a palpable aura, seemed to radiate even higher. Every 5 minutes, she would impatiently check the time on her phone and mutter under her breath about how behind we were on preparations. "Catherine, could you check the cupcakes and chop the salad? And can you also set the table outside?" She rattled off instructions like rapid-fire bullets. I nodded and did everything she asked, quietly, without complaint. I was used to it, accustomed to being an unspoken extension of their demands. I said I wanted string lights, not these burning lanterns, she whined, her voice laced with disdain. "I can hang up the string lights after we finish here," I offered gently, trying to appease her. Luna didn't even bother to look up from her. "Screen, whatever," she muttered dismissively. I turned away before Brenda could catch the visible hurt in my face. It's truly strange how a child's careless words can cut so deeply, especially when that child is your own granddaughter, someone you've poured so much love into. By 5 o'clock, the house was a cacophony of joyous noise. Laughter spilled from the patio, glasses clinked merrily, and soft music hummed gently through the outdoor speakers. I stood in the kitchen doorway, observing everyone for a moment, and just as I had feared, I effortlessly blended into the background, an unnoticed fixture. No one even seemed to register my presence. They had strung a small banner across the fence, proclaiming celebrating 45 years of love, Catherine and Frederick. But Frederick had been gone for 5 long years. There was no heartfelt speech, no special toast to our enduring love. No one asked me to say anything to share a memory. They all just mingled, talked about their jobs, the weather, their upcoming vacation plans, their lives. Seemingly oblivious to the very reason for the celebration, Luna was showing her friend around the sprawling yard, pointing out various features as if she owned the entire property. "My room's upstairs, my parents' room is there, that garden patch. Grandma plants weird herbs there." "Weird herbs," I murmured to myself, a quiet, bitter chuckle escaping my lips. Basil and thyme. So incredibly odd, right? I stood by the punch bowl for most of the evening, robotically offering refills, helping carry dirty dishes, and discreetly cleaning up spills. At one point, I tentatively asked Brenda if she wanted me to bring out the cake. "All right," she mumbled, distracted, her fingers flying across her phone screen. "Yeah, go ahead." "That's fine." So I did. I lit the candles myself, the tiny flames flickering uncertainly. I brought the cake out to the table, smiling through the dull ache in my legs, a phantom pain. People clapped half-heartedly, a polite ripple of applause. Elias finally stood up, clearing his throat. "Everyone, thanks for coming," he announced, his voice booming slightly over the music. "Ah, we're here to celebrate my mom. 45 years ago today, she married my dad." He paused, a moment of awkward silence. "And well, yeah, it's special." That was it. That was the extent of the speech. They sang half a verse of Happy Anniversary, a rushed, perfunctory sound, and then everyone immediately dug into the cake, their attention already elsewhere. No one asked me to say anything. No one gave me flowers. No one even offered a hug. I just stood there, a flimsy paper plate in hand, wondering how something meant to celebrate me could feel so utterly isolating, so completely empty. And still, I smiled, because that's what I've always done. A lifetime of performing happiness. But deep down, beneath the practiced smile, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. Tired, profoundly tired of smiling through being invisible. It all happened so fast. The cake had been swiftly cut, and the guests were scattered around the yard, their conversations flowing freely. I was quietly cleaning up the discarded paper plates and folding chairs, still wearing that same tired, fixed smile. Luna suddenly, came storming out of the house, clutching her favorite white hoodie, holding it up in the air as if it were a soiled flag. Her face was contorted in raw, unadulterated anger. "Ah, Grandma, what did you do to my sweater?" she shrieked. I looked up, confused, my hand still holding a crumpled napkin. "What happened, sweetheart?" "It shrank. It's tiny now," she screamed, her voice piercing. "I told you not to touch it." "I didn't know, honey. I just did the laundry like always. The tag said it could go in the dryer. You ruined it." She shrieked again, then spun on her heel and stomped back toward the kitchen, leaving me standing there, bewildered. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A minute later, I followed her into the house, intending to apologize again. Even though I genuinely had nothing to be sorry for, I just didn't want to leave things unresolved, tainted by anger. When I walked into the kitchen, she was standing by the counter, glaring menacingly at the kettle, which had just whistled its readiness. Before I could utter a single word, she grabbed the handle and, with a furious, deliberate motion, flung the steaming water directly toward me. I couldn't even react fast enough. My 68-year-old reflexes were simply not quick enough. The hot water splashed violently against my thigh, soaking through my dress, burning my skin instantly. A searing, shocking pain. I gasped, a sharp, involuntary sound, and stumbled backward, grabbing the counter for balance. The pain was excruciatingly sharp, like a sudden flash of fire searing my flesh. "Luna!" I cried out, my voice laced with agony and disbelief. She just stood there looking, startled but utterly devoid of remorse. Elias demanded, his gaze sweeping the scene. "She threw hot water on me." I managed to stammer, breathless, still shaking from the shock and pain. "It wasn't that hot," Luna mumbled defensively, not meeting my eyes, her defiance palpable. Brenda walked over and lightly touched my arm, a condescending gesture as if I were deliberately overreacting. "She didn't mean to, Catherine. She's just a kid." "She's 11, I retorted, trying desperately to stay calm through the throbbing pain, my voice trembling slightly. "That wasn't an accident." "She was upset," Brenda said, her voice dismissive, as if that justified everything. "You shrank her sweater." My mouth dropped open, a silent gasp of disbelief. "You're blaming." "No one's blaming anyone," Elias interjected quickly, stepping between us, his voice hushed and hurried. "Let's all just calm down, okay? We don't want to make a scene. Make a scene. It's at my own anniversary party." With my skin burning and my knees trembling uncontrollably, I stood there, surrounded by the very people I loved. People who treated my agonizing pain as nothing more than a minor inconvenience, a potential social faux pas. I looked at Luna. She didn't even offer a hesitant sorry. I looked at Brenda, who was already discreetly checking her phone, her attention already drifting. And then I looked at my son, my only child, who was more concerned about what the neighbors might overhear than about his own mother standing there, scalded and trembling with boiling water on her leg. It was in that excruciating moment that something inside me finally snapped. Not loudly, not angrily, just with a quiet, profound finality, like a heavy door in my heart quietly clicking shut permanently. All I could think, with a clarity that cut through the pain, was, this is what I gave my life for. I walked back outside, my damp dress clinging uncomfortably to my skin, the painful burn pulsing. Nobody asked why I looked so shaken. Nobody even noticed. I finished cleaning up the last of the plastic cups and paper plates. I smiled politely at the departing guests. I waved goodbye, a silent, almost mechanical gesture. And then, with a resolve born of pain and disillusionment, I went upstairs to my small guest room, locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally, mercifully, let the tears fall silently down my face, not just for the physical burn, but for every time I'd swallowed my emotional pain, for every time I was told to stay quiet, for every time they dismissed my feelings with "you're overreacting," when I was simply fundamentally hurt. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. I stared at the ceiling, the throbbing burn on my leg a constant reminder. And a profound thought began to bloom in my mind, like a stubborn seed cracking open through concrete. It's time. The next morning, I didn't descend for breakfast. Could hear them moving around downstairs, mugs clinking. The back door sliding open, Elias's familiar voice asking where his sunglasses were. Just like any other mundane morning. But I remained in my room, sitting quietly with the curtains drawn, an old forgotten box resting in my lap. The burn on my thigh had formed a red, angry, blistering patch. I hadn't shown it to anyone. What would have been the point? Instead, I pulled out a small, unassuming folder from under the bed. Inside were meticulously stacked papers, bank statements, legal documents, and a sealed envelope with my name. Catherine Hayes, precisely typed across the front. I ran my fingers over it slowly, a wave of forgotten memories washing over me. It had been years since I had touched this folder, but I remembered everything with startling clarity. When my older sister, Beatrice, passed away 5 years ago, she had astonishingly left me her entire estate. No one else in the family knew. She'd never had children of her own, and she always maintained that I was the only one who ever truly saw her, who understood her quiet struggles. We weren't close in a loud, demonstrative way, but we understood each other on a fundamental level. We both knew what it was like to be constantly needed, but never truly wanted for our own sake. She had left me $2,400,000. She had explicitly told me to use it for myself, to finally live. But I never did. I had stubbornly told myself I didn't need it, that my family needed me more, that simply being there for Elias, Brenda, and Luna was enough, a worthy sacrifice. I had stayed quiet, faithfully folding towels, pouring juice, and cleaning their kitchen. While that substantial sum of money sat untouched, patiently waiting in a high-interest savings account under my sole name. Until now, I opened the banking app on my phone, my fingers steady. The balance $2,479,382.94. Still there, still waiting. Waiting for the day I would finally choose myself, unapologetically. And suddenly, the deep-seated shame I'd always felt about being selfish, about daring to want something for myself, was gone. All I felt was an exhilarating clarity. I could leave. I could move out. I could start fresh entirely on my own terms. They thought I was trapped, that I had no options, that I was just Grandma, a passive, dependent figure floating aimlessly through their lives, clinging to them like dead weight. They were profoundly wrong. That evening, I meticulously made a list of things I needed to accomplish. Find a new place to live. Pack only the absolute essentials. Contact the lawyer who had helped manage Beatrice's estate, and most importantly, leave without any warning. No emotional speeches, no desperate begging, no guilt trips. It's just a quiet, dignified exit. Because if there's one invaluable lesson I've learned throughout my 68 years, it's that people rarely value what they genuinely believe will always, effortlessly, be there. So I would show them what it truly looks like when I'm not. It began predictably with dirty dishes festering in the sink, Luna yelling at her tablet, and Brenda brushing past me in the hallway like I was nothing more than a sentient piece of furniture. Just like any other mundane morning, and in a strange way that made it easier. I spent the afternoon slowly packing, not everything, just the things that truly mattered to my soul. A few cherished photo albums, my favorite chipped tea mug, the lavender dress from the ill-fated party now, washed and neatly folded, and, of course, the indispensable folder containing Beatrice's inheritance documents. I didn't pack anything from the kitchen. None of the appliances or good dishes I'd bought over the years. The expensive blender, even the microwavable of it, was mine. Yet I left it. Let them keep the material objects. I was taking back something far more significant. Myself. Around. 6 in the evening, I zipped up my single suitcase and sat on the edge of the bed for a while. A quiet moment of contemplation. The burn on my thigh had faded to a faint pink scar, but the searing memory was still sharp, vivid. They hadn't brought it up once. Not Elias, not Brenda, not even Luna. I stood up, took a deep, steadying breath, and walked downstairs. Elias. We sprawled on the couch, mindlessly watching television. Brenda was in the kitchen, rhythmically chopping vegetables for dinner. Luna was absorbed in her phone at the dining table, her legs casually propped up on a chair. "I'm heading out," I announced, my voice calm, flat, devoid of emotion. Elias looked up, startled, his eyes narrowing. "Where to?" "I'm moving out," I stated simply. Brenda immediately stopped chopping, her knife suspended midair. "Wait, what?" "I found a place," I continued, my voice unwavering. "I'll be staying there from now on." Luna barely even glanced up from her screen. Elias laughed, a short, dismissive sound, as if I were telling a bad joke. "Mom, be serious. You don't have a pension. Where would you even go?" I smiled, a genuine, private smile. "I'll manage. You can't just leave," Brenda exclaimed, her voice rising in alarm. "We rely on you." "What about Luna's pickup schedule? What about helping with dinner and the laundry?" "You'll figure it out," I said softly, looking directly at them. "You're being unreasonable," Elias snapped, his face darkening with irritation. "Don't throw a tantrum just because of a sweater." "It wasn't just a sweater," I stated, my voice still eerily calm. "Oh my God," Brenda groaned, rolling her eyes. "It was an accident. She's a kid." I looked at both of them, my gaze unwavering. No anger burned in my eyes. No yelling escaped my lips, just silence and a profound, undeniable truth. She poured boiling water on me. "You said she's just a kid. You didn't even bother to check if I was okay." That told me everything I needed to know. Elias rolled his eyes again, a familiar gesture of dismissiveness. "You're blowing it out of proportion." "No," I said, a quiet strength entering my voice. "I've just finally opened my eyes." I picked up my suitcase, its weight a comforting anchor, and walked toward the door. Elias stood up, his face etched with something akin to panic. "Mom, come on, don't do this. Don't be dramatic." I paused, turned to face him one last time, and said the words I never thought I'd ever utter aloud. "I spent my whole life putting everyone else first. It's my turn now." And then I walked out. No one followed me. The building was taller than anything I'd ever imagined living in, a shimmering monolith of glass and steel. It had a sleek, modern facade that gleamed in the sunlight and a polite doorman who greeted me with a warm smile. As if I actually mattered, as if I belonged. "Good evening, Ms. Hayes," he said, taking my suitcase with an elegant flourish. "Welcome home, home." That word felt strange on my tongue, but in a profoundly good way. The apartment was on the 22nd floor. I had toured it quietly. A week earlier, during one of those afternoons when Brenda assumed I was out walking to clear my head, lost in my thoughts. I hadn't said anything to them then, because I wasn't ready for the inevitable barrage of questions, or worse, their feigned hollow concern. But the moment I stepped inside this place, I knew, with an unshakable certainty, that it was where I was meant to be. It was small, intimate, but it sparkled with pristine cleanliness and untapped potential. Wide windows offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the glittering city lights. A soft gray couch invited relaxation, and a tiny balcony beckoned with just enough space for a comfortable chair and a vibrant potted plant. No peeling paint, no loud, demanding voices, no one asking me what was for dinner. I unpacked slowly, deliberately, placing each item exactly where I wanted it. A profound act of self-possession. For the first time in decades, I didn't have to make space for anyone else's belongings, anyone else's demands. When I placed my cherished photo of Frederick and Elias on the shelf, I didn't cry. I just gazed at it for a moment, a pang of bittersweet nostalgia, then turned it slightly so the soft light hit it better, illuminating the memories. That night, I made tea, just for myself, a simple personal ritual, and sat on the balcony in profound silence. No dishes clanging discordantly in the background, no heavy footsteps thudding overhead, no one calling Mom. From another room, just me, the vast, shimmering city, and the quiet, comforting sound of my own breathing. I had thought I would feel an overwhelming loneliness. Instead, I felt light, unburdened, free. I was wondering when you'd finally reach out. I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. I'm ready to use the money for myself, I told him, my voice firm. He chuckled softly. It's yours. All of it. You can finally stop asking for permission to live. That last line resonated deeply within me, staying with me for the rest of the day. A liberating mantra. Stop asking for permission to live. So, I began doing small, simple things I'd always yearned to do, but had never, ever been able to. I ordered. New clothes, not flashy, expensive ones, just soft, well-fitted pieces that made me feel comfortable, truly human again. I eagerly booked piano lessons for beginners. I had always loved the rich, evocative sound of classical music, especially Claude Debussy, but had never had the time or the energy to learn. I bought a beautiful leather journal. I signed up for a painting workshop at the local community center, eager to explore my creative side. I didn't tell anyone about these new pursuits. I didn't need to, because this part of my life wasn't about being useful to others. It was simply about being. I was just getting started, for the first time. In what felt like decades, I didn't wake up to the jarring blare of an alarm clock or someone shouting my name from the hallway. No one demanded to know where their socks were. No one expected breakfast to be waiting for them. No one looked at me with a face that implicitly said, "What took you so long?" I woke up slowly, languidly. I stretched, truly stretching my tired limbs. I made tea, savoring the ritual. And I sat by the window, watching as the sunlight crept across the floor, warm and golden, illuminating the dust motes, dancing in the air. And I thought about all the years I had spent working tirelessly for free. Not in a traditional job, but in a life that demanded everything from me and returned very, very little. People often say stay-at-home mothers don't really work. Let me tell you what my job description truly entailed. I was a dedicated cook, a meticulous house cleaner, a relentless laundry folder, a personal shopper, an amateur child therapist, a patient tutor, a compassionate nurse, a tireless chauffeur, a 24/7 babysitter, an ever-present help desk that never, ever went offline. And I performed all of it with a smile because I genuinely believed that was love. But sitting in this quiet, peaceful apartment, it finally hit me with the force of a revelation. Love and labor are not the same thing. You can love your family profoundly and still unequivocally say, "I deserve rest." You can care deeply for them and still assert, "I am not your maid." You can give your heart, but not your entire, precious life. I had spent so long shrinking, myself, contorting my desires to fit inside their world. I hadn't realized I could and should have one entirely of my own. A profound shift occurred inside me, a quiet revolution. At lunch, I met a remarkable woman named Martha from my building. She was 70, vibrant, and wore bright red lipstick with an audacious pair of sneakers. "You're new," she observed with a knowing grin. "You have the kind of face that looks like it finally exhaled." I laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. "Yeah," I admitted. "Maybe I did." We shared coffee on the rooftop patio, the city sprawling beneath us. She told me about her divorce 20 years ago. "The day I stopped folding his socks," she said, taking a deliberate sip of her espresso. "It's the day I got my soul back." That line resonated deeply, clinging to me. Later that evening, I pulled out my new journal and wrote a single, powerful sentence on the very first page. "You're allowed to exist without proving your worth." I read it aloud twice, softly, letting the words sink in. Then I underlined it. deeply, because I desperately needed to believe it to internalize its truth. Tomorrow, I had my first piano lesson. I was nervous, yes, but also filled with an exhilarating excitement, like a schoolgirl again. Brenda used to refer to me as a ghost in their house. Not to my face, of course, but I overheard her once whispering conspiratorially on the phone. She just floats around like she's part of the furniture. She'd sneered. She was right. I was a ghost, haunting the periphery of their lives, but not anymore. I wasn't haunting anyone else's life now. I was finally, truly living mine. Hi, Mom. I hope you're doing well. Una's been asking about you lately. She misses you. We were thinking maybe you could come over for dinner this weekend. It's just us. No guests or anything fancy. We'd love to see you. Also, if you happen to be free sometime next week, I wanted to talk to you about something. We're having a bit of a rough month financially. It's just a small hiccup. Mortgage stuff, car insurance, you know how it is. Anyway, hope you're doing okay. Let us know about dinner. Love, Elias. The first half of the email sounded sweet enough, almost heartfelt. The second half, however, felt like a transparent string attached to a balloon pulling it back. Or perhaps I was the balloon. They missed me, but also could I conveniently help with the bills? The same people who hadn't called me in weeks. The same people who had watched me leave their home with a suitcase and hadn't made a single move to stop me. I took a deep breath, closed the email, then reopened it. Still the same words. No mention of Luna's violent outburst. No apology for the burn that still faintly scarred my skin. No, we're sorry you felt hurt. It's just a gentle, manipulative tug to pull me back into their orbit and a quiet, insidious expectation that I would say yes, as I always had. The next day, I walked to a charming cafe around the corner from my new building. The barista, a kind young man, had already memorized my order by now. Peppermint tea with honey and a single warm biscuit. He smiled as he passed it over the counter and said, "You look peaceful today, Ms. Hayes." I nodded, a small, genuine smile. Gracing my lips, I feel peaceful. But in my mind, that email from Elias kept circling, a persistent, unwelcome thought. For most of my life, I would have replied instantly, saying yes without a second thought. Of course, I'd come to dinner. Of course, I'd help with the bills. That's what mothers do, right? That's what mothers do. But this time, I opened my phone and, with a newfound certainty, wrote back, "Hi, Elias. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to hear Luna is doing okay, but I won't be coming for dinner. Not this weekend or the next. I need some time and space to be on my own. And I'm finally learning that I'm allowed to say no. Take care, Mom." No long, rambling explanation. No apology for my absence. No promise of future help or future forgiveness. Just a clear, concise answer. I hit send, closed the app, and finished my tea slowly, feeling the warm afternoon sun on my face. Let them sit with that silence for once. It came late, almost midnight. I was reading a book in bed, something light. A comforting romance where the characters always openly expressed what they felt, and everyone, predictably, found closure. Real life, I knew, wasn't often like that, but it was comforting to pretend for a while. My phone buzzed softly. I expected a news alert or a weather update, but it was a message from Brenda. That genuinely surprised me. We hadn't spoken. Not a single word. Not even a shallow check-in or a forwarded meme since the night I left. I hesitated for a second, then tapped the screen, a new courage fluttering in my chest. "Hi, Catherine. Hope you're okay. I know things got tense, but Luna really misses you, and we've been talking about how things went down. I think we all could have handled things better. We're having dinner on Sunday, just the three of us. If you'd be open to it, we'd love to have you. Also, I hate to bring this up, but Ilias's paycheck was delayed and things are tight. If there's any way you could help us cover this month's tuition for Luna, we'd be so grateful, just until things smooth out. No pressure, of course. I hope to see you soon." I stared at the screen for a long, quiet time, was polite, soft, even carefully gentle. But not once did the message say, "We're sorry." Not once did it acknowledge what happened to you was wrong. It cunningly skipped the part where I was injured, disregarded, and went straight to the part where I was conveniently needed again, the choice. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I got up, walked to my sparkling new kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. I stood there under the soft ceiling light, holding the cold glass, feeling the familiar, insidious weight of that old pull, that ingrained sense of obligation. The old me, the woman I used to be, would have said yes. She would have felt profoundly guilty. She would have rationalized that it wasn't that bad, that maybe she overreacted, that perhaps they really did miss her. It's the person, not just the utility. But the new me, the me who had finally dared to take a breath for herself, she knew better. I walked back to bed and composed a new message, my fingers flying across the screen with newfound conviction. Brenda, I appreciate your message. I truly do, but I want to be very clear. What happened wasn't just about a sweater or a delayed paycheck. It was about years of being overlooked, disrespected, and treated like a backup plan. Luna may be a child, but she's old enough to know the difference between simple frustration and outright violence. And you, Brenda, you were old enough to stand up for me, but you didn't. As for the money, no. You've all had enough of me, enough of my time, enough of my labor, enough of my care, and certainly enough of my silence. I won't be attending dinner. I won't be wiring anything to your account. I hope things improve for you, but this time it won't be at my expense. I read it twice before hitting send. It didn't feel cruel. It felt profoundly clear. And that, I realized with a quiet certainty, was a liberating first for me. I was sitting in the small private practice room on the 4th floor of my building, a bright, serene space with soft lighting and a little upright piano nestled in the corner that most residents, I imagined, simply ignored. But for me, it was a quiet, long-cherished dream finally coming true. My teacher, Clara, a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, sat patiently beside me. "Don't worry about being perfect," she said, her voice soothing. "This isn't about performance. It's about feeling, Catherine." I nodded, a small wave of relief washing over me. We started slowly, with simple foundational chords. I fumbled, I laughed, a light, unrestrained sound. She laughed with me, not at me, and somehow even my clumsy mistakes felt like nascent music. A forgotten part of myself finally being rediscovered, as the lesson drew to a close. Clara said, "Next week, we'll begin Clair de Lune. You said it's your favorite, right?" A T smiled, a genuine, expansive smile. "Yes," I confirmed, "always has been. Even when I didn't know what the title meant, I just loved how it made me feel." She closed the piano lid gently, her movements graceful. "It's a beautiful piece," she mused. "Soft, but strong. It's just like you, Catherine." That surprised me. No one had ever called me that before. Strong? Sure. I'd been called that countless times, but soft and strong. I hadn't realized you could be both simultaneously. I walked out of that room feeling lighter than I had walked in, buoyant with a moment that belonged entirely to me. That evening, the building held a small, informal gathering for residents. Coffee, homemade cookies, and an open mic piano session. Martha from upstairs nudged me playfully toward the piano. "Come on, play something," she encouraged. "I'm not ready." I demurred, my old insecurities briefly surfacing. "You're never ready." She grinned, her eyes sparkling. "That's the trick. Do it anyway." So I sat down, my heart thrumming a nervous rhythm. I didn't play a full song, just a few notes, the simple chords Clara had taught me, a soft, tentative melody, a beginning. But as the delicate sound filled the lounge, people paused. Some looked up from their coffee mugs, their conversations fading. One man even closed his eyes, lost in the unexpected beauty. It wasn't perfect, not by any classical standard, but it was profoundly mine. And for the first time in years, I wasn't background music. I wasn't someone's helper, someone's fill-in, someone's ghost. I was Catherine, and I was truly being heard. When I finished, there was light scattered clapping. Not loud, not forced, just enough to tell me a quiet affirmation. We saw you. We felt that. Small, precious truth. Afterward, I stepped out onto the rooftop garden. The wind was cool against my skin, but gentle, a soothing caress. I stood there, arms crossed, heart open, and I thought, maybe healing doesn't always arrive with fire and shouting. Maybe sometimes it comes one quiet note at a time. And that for tonight was enough. It had been almost a month since I replied to Brenda's message. That carefully worded plea for money. The silence had stretched out between us like a long, cold, empty hallway. And honestly, I was entirely okay with that. I had found a new rhythm in my days. Piano lessons on Mondays, painting on Wednesdays, shared tea with Martha on Fridays. I was slowly, steadily starting to feel like a whole person again, a person with her own schedule, her own choices, her own hard-won peace. Until the letter arrived. Yes, an actual physical letter, handwritten, slipped mysteriously under my apartment door. At first, I thought it was a flyer for a local business or a neighbor's accidental mistake. But when I picked it up and saw the familiar handwriting, my hand stopped moving midair, my heart catching in my throat. It was from Luna, my granddaughter. The letter was short, earnest. Hi, Grandma. I don't really know how to write letters, so sorry if this is weird. Mom and Dad don't know I'm sending this. Wanted to say I'm sorry for what I did. I was mad and I acted stupid. You didn't deserve that. I miss you. I miss your pancakes and your smell. And how you always tuck in the corners of the bed like magic. Things at home are kind of tense. Mom and Dad fight a lot about money and stuff. Heard them say your name a few times. I don't really get what's happening, but I hope you're okay. Love, Luna. I sat down heavily on the edge of my couch and held the letter in both hands, my fingers tracing the uneven script. Her handwriting was messy, with little hearts dotting. Her eyes, the kind of letter only a child would write, but one that cut straight through me, piercing my carefully constructed emotional walls. Not because I felt guilt for my actions, but because I remembered that she was still growing, still learning, still tentatively shaping her own nascent sense of right and wrong, of justice. The question hung in the air. What to do? For a moment, an overwhelming urge washed over me. I wanted to fold the letter up, rush straight to their house, envelop her in a tight hug, bake her favorite cookies, and simply be the doting grandma she so clearly missed. But then I remembered the burning pain on my leg and how no one else, not her parents, not Elias, had taken genuine responsibility for her actions or their own complicity. Luna's letter was a moment of unexpected light, yes? But it didn't magically erase the profound darkness I had walked through, the years of neglect. So I didn't write back. Not yet. I carefully folded the letter and placed it gently in my journal. A precious, fragile testament. Perhaps I would reply one day. Perhaps I'd see her again. But this time I wouldn't go running back just because the door had cracked open, offering a glimpse of what used to be. This time I would only go when I was truly ready, and I wasn't ready. Not yet. I was at home, curled up with a captivating book and a warm blanket, enjoying the soothing sound of the rain tapping rhythmically on my window pane. The apartment felt like a safe, impenetrable cocoon, quiet, peaceful, unequivocal meanie. Then, the phone rang. Not a message this time, a direct call. From Elias, I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the red decline button. I hadn't heard his voice since the day I walked out. I nearly ignored it, letting it ring out. But something deep inside me, a newfound resolve, whispered, no more avoiding. So I answered, hello. His voice came through flat and tense, crackling with barely suppressed anger. Mom, Elias, you could have told us you were sitting on a fortune, he snapped, his voice sharp with accusation. You let us believe you were broke while we were drowning in bills. There it was. Not a greeting, not a single question about how I was doing, not a hint of concern. Straight to the money, the core of their perceived grievance. I didn't react. My expression calm. That money was never yours, I stated, my voice steady. We're your family, he retorted sharply. Families. Help each other. I let out a small, dry laugh, devoid of humor. You mean like how you helped me when I got burned? Silence thick and heavy on the line. Do you mean like the way Brenda told me I was overreacting? Like how Luna didn't even apologize until weeks later and only in secret? That was he. Started scrambling for an excuse. No, I interrupted, my voice firm. Don't explain it, just hear me. I sat up straighter in my chair, my spine rigid. My voice remained calm, but it carried an undeniable weight. A lifetime of suppressed grievances. For years, I gave you everything. I helped raise your daughter. I meticulously cleaned your home. I gave you my time, my labor, my savings. I did it out of love. But you started treating it like a service I owed you. A never-ending, uncompensated service? That's not fair, he mumbled, his voice losing some of its initial bluster. What's not fair is that I couldn't even be safe in your home, I countered, the words flowing effortlessly. What's not fair is you acting like I owe you something when you gave me nothing but silence when I needed you most. He went quiet again, the silence stretching. Then, finally, he said, his voice laced with wounded pride, You're turning your back on us, Mom. No, I replied, a profound sense of truth in my words. You turned your back on me first. I just finally stopped pretending, not to notice. Then his voice changed, hardening, becoming angry, bitter. You think you're better than us now? Living in your fancy building, playing piano, acting like a queen? That's not real life. It's my real life, I stated simply, a quiet triumph in my tone. And it's infinitely better than being treated like a ghost in someone else's. You're using money to punish us, he accused, spitting the words. I'm using boundaries to protect myself, I corrected calmly. He exhaled sharply, a frustrated, defeated sound. Don't bother coming back ever. I wasn't planning to, I said, my voice steady and unwavering. Goodbye, Elias. Then I hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long time, the cool weight of it a grounding sensation. The rain continued to fall outside, soft and steady, washing the city clean. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was simply calm. Not because it didn't hurt a deep residual ache, but because I knew I had finally, definitively said what needed to be said. I had found my voice, a voice I thought was long lost. And I had used it. Powerfully. It's funny how quickly peace can become your new normal. I thought I'd miss them more. I thought I'd sit by the window every day, wondering what Luna was doing, what Brenda was cooking, whether Elias was still angry, consumed by resentment. But I didn't. Not in the way I expected. I missed the idea of them, the cherished version. Of them I used to imagine when I still naively believed my boundless love could magically fix everything. But I didn't miss the harsh reality, the pervasive silence, the casual disrespect, the soul-crushing feeling of being perpetually needed but never truly seen. My days now had a beautiful, liberating shape, not because anyone dictated what I should do, but because I chose it every single moment. Mondays, I had my piano class. I painstakingly learned to play the first page of Clair de Lune, my fingers growing stronger with each passing week, as Clara observed with a proud smile. Tuesdays, I volunteered at a local women's shelter, helping sort donations of clothes, making comforting cups of tea, and listening empathetically to stories that echoed my own and those of my dear sister, Beatrice. Wednesdays, I painted. Nothing grand or fancy, Just simple flowers, cityscapes, abstract faces. I wasn't particularly good, but I wasn't trying to impress anyone. That was the profound beauty of it, the freedom of creation without expectation. Thursdays, I met with Martha and her tiny, eclectic book club. We devoured stories about women who broke free from their constraints, who courageously walked away from situations that diminished them, who found profound joy after enduring unimaginable pain, and Fridays were sacred. Fridays were for me alone. I'd leisurely walk through the bustling farmer's market, buy fresh flowers to adorn my apartment, make myself a quiet, comforting dinner, and watch the sunset paint the sky from my private balcony. No one interrupted me. No one needed anything. It truly felt like breathing, truly breathing for the first time in years. But one quiet morning, I found myself thinking about Luna, not the girl who had screamed at me and thrown hot water, but the tiny one who used to fall asleep so trustingly in my arms, her soft weight a comfort. The one who drew me stick figure, cards with crayon hearts, and whispered, "You're my favorite person in the whole wide world." So I did something simple, a gesture born of quiet love, not obligation. I set up a scholarship fund in Beatrice's name, dedicated to her memory, with a private note that it could be used for Luna's future education if she ever needed it. Number. Announcement. No letter to them, no demand for credit, no expectation of thanks. It's just a quiet, anonymous gift, like the one Beatrice had once given me. Love, I realized, doesn't always need a return address. My apartment no longer felt new, felt unequivocally mine. The plush rug I had painstakingly picked out. It's the stack of books I chose for my personal library. It's the picture frames I filled not with family photos, but with images of places I dreamed of visiting. I wasn't waiting to be invited back into their lives. I wasn't holding space for people who wouldn't hold it for me. I had meticulously redesigned not just my physical life, but my entire fundamental idea of love. It wasn't about endless, thankless sacrifice anymore. It was about balance, about conscious choice, about mutual respect. And I had all three now in abundance. 1 year to the day since I had walked out of Elias's house. 1 year since that dreadful party where they had supposedly celebrated my anniversary while I stood in the background like an invisible shadow. And now, precisely 1 year later, I was standing in the middle of my own apartment, stringing up soft, twinkling fairy lights. Around the windows, my heart light and full. My favorite tea was steeping, its fragrant aroma filling the kitchen. Gentle piano music played softly from the Bluetooth speaker. It wasn't Claire de Lune today, not quite. But it was something equally gentle, something profoundly joyful. Wasn't a party for others' approval? This was a quiet, profound celebration for me. Martha arrived first, clutching a box of lemon tarts, her eyes twinkling. "You're glowing, Catherine." She smiled warmly as she stepped inside. "I bought mascara," I announced proudly, a small, triumphant secret shared. "First time in 10 years. She laughed a rich, full sound. "Watch out, world." Then came Clara, my piano teacher, carrying a small framed print of sheet music that read, "You played for yourself, and that was enough." I nearly wept when I read it, the words echoing my deepest truths. 3 kind neighbors arrived with vibrant bouquets of flowers and genuine heartfelt hugs. Someone brought a bottle of sparkling wine. Someone else brought a card that simply said thank you for being exactly who you are. No one asked me to serve anything. No one waited for me to clean up their mess. They just sat, talked, listened, and laughed with me. Not at me, not around me, but truly, deeply with me. At one point, Martha stood up, raising her glass in a toast. "To Catherine," she announced, her voice strong and clear, "who threw away everyone's expectations and built a brand new life from the ground up." Everyone cheered softly, a warm, resonant hum filling the room. I laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that echoed with newfound freedom. I didn't throw everything away, I clarified, lifting my own glass. Just the things that kept me small. And then my voice filled with clarity and conviction. I added, 1 year ago, I walked out of a house that I helped build. I left behind people I loved deeply in my own way. And I took something with me that no one ever expected. Myself, my time, my dignity, my voice. And it turns out that was more valuable than anything I ever gave them. They clapped again, a heartfelt, sustained applause. And for the very first time in my life, I stood in a room full of people who truly saw me not as a helper, not as a placeholder, not as someone to be used when convenient, but as Catherine. Just Catherine. After everyone had left and the apartment grew quiet once more, I sat on my balcony with a cozy blanket on my lap, gazing up at the countless stars overhead. The city buzzed below, a symphony of distant life. But up here, it was still tranquil. I thought about Frederick. I thought about Elias. I even briefly thought about Luna. And then, with a peaceful sigh, I let them go. I picked up my journal and wrote just 5 words, a profound dedication to my journey. Happy anniversary to my freedom. Then I closed the book, smiled a true unburdened smile, and went to bed, ready for a new day.